moment, everything almost ended. Imagine this. It's a quiet morning. The sky looks normal. People are heading to work. Children are laughing on their way to school. And then, in less than 30 minutes, everything disappears. Not because of an earthquake, not because of a storm, but because of a decision. A decision made by a few men under pressure with incomplete information and fear closing in from every side. This is not fiction. This is a true story of the closest humanity has ever come to total destruction. A moment during the Cuban Missile Crisis, when the world stood on the edge of nuclear war and didn't even fully realize it. Because while leaders argued above ground, the most dangerous decision in human history was unfolding deep beneath the ocean, inside a submarine cut off from the world, and only one man stood between life and annihilation. To understand how close we came to disaster, you have to understand the world of 1962. This was not a peaceful time. This was the Cold War. Two superpowers locked in a silent battle for dominance. On one side, the United States. On the other, the Soviet Union. Both nations possessed nuclear weapons. Not just a few, thousands. Each one capable of wiping out entire cities in seconds. And both sides believed one thing. If war came, you had to strike first, because whoever struck second might not survive to respond. This belief created a terrifying balance, a balance known as mutually assured destruction. If one side launched, the other would launch back, and the result? Total annihilation. No winners, no survivors, just silence. At the center of this growing tension were two leaders. In Washington, President John F. Kennedy, young, calculated, under immense pressure. And in Moscow, Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev, bold, strategic, determined to challenge American power. Both men understood the stakes, but neither wanted to appear weak, and that was the problem. In October 1962, everything changed. High above the earth, an American U-2 spy plane flew over Cuba. What it captured would shock the world. Photographs revealed something chilling. The Soviet Union was secretly building nuclear missile sites in Cuba, not somewhere far away, not across oceans, but just 90 miles from the United States. These missiles could reach major American cities in minutes. There would be no time to react, no time to defend, just impact and destruction. When the images were presented to President Kennedy, the room fell silent. This wasn't just a military threat. This was a direct challenge. A message from the Soviet Union. We are closer than you think. And suddenly, the balance of power shifted. The next 13 days would become some of the most dangerous in human history. Inside the White House, Kennedy and his advisors debated their options, each one more dangerous than the last. Option 1, airstrikes. Destroy the missile sites before they become operational. But if even one missile survived, the consequences would be catastrophic. Option 2, invasion. Send troops into Cuba and take control. But that could trigger a full-scale war with the Soviet Union. Option 3, do nothing. Wait, hope. But hope was not a strategy. Instead, Kennedy chose a fourth option, a naval blockade. American warships moved into position, forming a line around Cuba. No Soviet ship would be allowed through. It was a bold move, a dangerous move, because if Soviet ships tried to break the blockade, the United States would have to respond. And one wrong move could start a war. Across the ocean, Khrushchev watched. He had his own choices to make. Back down and lose face, or push forward and risk nuclear conflict. The world held its breath. As the crisis unfolded, fear spread rapidly. People didn't need the full details to understand the danger. They could feel it. Governments began preparing for the worst. Emergency plans were activated. Military forces were placed on high alert. Bombers were fueled and ready. Missiles were armed. Across cities, families began building fallout shelters. Some stocked food, others simply prayed. In schools, children practiced drills. Duck and cover, as if a desk could protect them from nuclear fire. The truth was, nothing could. At any moment, sirens could sound, and within minutes, everything could be over. But while the world focused on ships and speeches, something far more dangerous was happening. Out of sight, deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, a Soviet submarine moved silently through the water. It was one of several sent toward Cuba. But this submarine was different. It carried a secret, a nuclear torpedo, a weapon powerful enough to destroy an entire fleet and potentially trigger a global war. Inside the submarine, conditions were deteriorating. The crew had been underwater for days, cut off from communication. They had no contact with Moscow, no updates, no idea what was happening above. The temperature inside rose to unbearable levels, over 40 degrees Celsius. The air grew thick, oxygen levels dropped. Men were exhausted, sweating, struggling to breathe, and then everything got worse. Above the submarine, American naval forces had detected something. They knew a Soviet submarine was nearby, but they didn't know its intentions. To force it to surface, they began dropping depth charges, small controlled explosives, harmless, just signals. But inside the submarine, it didn't feel harmless. It felt like an attack. Explosions echoed through the hull. Metal shook, lights flickered. The crew panicked. To them, there was only one explanation. War had begun. Inside that submarine, 3 men held ultimate authority: the captain, the political officer, and a 3rd senior officer, to launch the nuclear torpedo. All 3 had to agree. As explosions continued around them, the captain reached a conclusion. They were under attack. War had started. And if war had started, they had orders. Use the weapon. The political officer agreed. 2 votes. Just one more, and the torpedo would be launched. A nuclear explosion would erupt in the ocean. The United States would detect it and assume the worst, that they had been attacked. Retaliation would be immediate. Missiles would fly, targets would be hit, and the world would burn. Everything now depended on one man, Vasily Arkhipov. Arkhipov was not unaware of the danger. He felt it. He heard the explosions. He saw the fear in the eyes of the crew. He knew the pressure, but he also knew something else. There had been no confirmation, no direct order, no clear signal that war had officially begun. Just noise, just fear, just assumptions. And in that moment, he made a choice. He refused. He argued with the captain. He challenged the decision. He stood his ground. Minutes passed. Tension filled the submarine. Voices rose. The weight of the world pressed down. But Arkhipov did not give in. And finally, the decision changed. The torpedo was not launched. It's difficult to fully understand just how close the world came to destruction. If that torpedo had been fired, the consequences would have been immediate. American forces would have detected the explosion. They would not have seen it as a warning. They would have seen it as an attack. And in the Cold War, there was no time to hesitate. The response would have been swift. Nuclear missiles launched, targets locked, cities destroyed. The Soviet Union would respond. Then allies, then more nations. Within hours, millions would be dead. Within days, hundreds of millions. And the aftermath would last for decades. Radiation poisoning, global famine, environmental collapse, a nuclear winter blocking sunlight, destroying crops, ending ecosystems. Civilization, as we know it, would not survive, all from one decision. That never happened. While the submarine incident remained unknown, leaders above ground continued searching for a solution. Back-channel communications intensified. Messages were exchanged. Tensions slowly shifted. Finally, a deal was reached. The Soviet Union agreed to remove its missiles from Cuba. In return, the United States promised not to invade Cuba. And secretly, they agreed to remove their missiles from Turkey. It was a compromise, a quiet one, but it worked. The ships turned back. The weapons were dismantled. The crisis ended. For years, the world believed it had come close to war, but not that close. The submarine incident remained classified, hidden, unknown. It wasn't until decades later that the truth emerged, that one man, in one moment, had prevented a nuclear catastrophe. No headlines, no celebration, just history slowly revealing the truth. Today, the world is different, but also not so different. Nuclear weapons still exist. Tensions still rise. Decisions are still made under pressure. And the same question remains: what happens when fear replaces judgment? Because history has shown us something important. Sometimes, the fate of the world doesn't depend on armies, or weapons, or governments. Sometimes, it depends on one person choosing not to act in fear. On that day, deep beneath the ocean, there was no explosion, no fire, no war, just silence. A silence that allowed the world to continue, to grow, to survive, because one man, Vasily Arkhipov, made a decision not to act, a decision to wait, a decision that saved millions, maybe billions, and maybe you. The world didn't survive because of power. It survived because someone chose not to use it.